many people do this. So I will let
There's a notorious Tom Ross in Findlay who keeps making the papers. Apparently he smokes pot and gets in trouble all the time. And I was working at Marathon, people would take the articles and set them on my desk with question marks. You know, that's the difference. Okay, guys. 6 on the nose, always start your class on time, right, Jeffy? Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Tom Ross. I was asked to do this. We've been talking about the pollution down at the potential pollution, I guess, the pollution levels down at what's soon to be the park. Or maybe it won't be, I don't know when we're done. But, so my background, just so you know, I'm not just some hack up here talking to hear myself talk. Graduated from the University of Pittsburgh, degree in chemistry and a degree in engineering, mechanical. Certified hazardous materials manager, certified safety professional. I have 2 PEs. I'm educated. Doesn't mean anything other than the fact that I worked in the real world in Marathon Oil Company for 20 years in the environmental world. And kept all the executives out of jail there. They're always happy about it. And I did tons of environmental work, both in project-wise and as an engineer, and also as a compliance person. Waste was one of my specialties. I did that for many years. Air, water, and all the media that the EPA regulates, I was subject to. So I was happy to be there. I was able to retire a little bit early. I also had a consulting firm, which I finally closed shop on. It's called T. Ross Environmental Services. Got plenty of clients over the years. And, I was an expert witness in many cases for my clients. Also was able to get most of them on. I was pretty good at troubleshooting, and I also taught at the University of Findlay. The Oil Hazards Training Center there, I taught for many years. And this was one of my specialties, the hazardous waste stuff. So what I'm going to talk to you today about is the same stuff that I've been teaching for many years, and hopefully, I was trying to figure out how to teach this. I got to tell you, most of the time when I'm teaching it, you have industry professionals, folks that are in the field. They do environmental work for their company. They're trying to keep their company out of jail. Or, they're EPA people. I've taught a lot of EPA people over the years. And believe it or not, the EPA people don't always know the regs. They don't. So they come to our classes from time to time, a lot of times actually. So attorneys, industry professionals, CEOs, people that want to know about their liability. So what we're going to talk about today, I'm going to try to boil down what should be a 4-day class into an hour and a half. It's complicated. It's very strange the way the EPA writes the rules, but it is one of the most powerful pieces of legislation that the federal government has ever written. We're going to start with something called CERCLA. And the liability associated with CERCLA, I'm going to show you, and I'm going to prove to you, the regulations, that each and every person in this room, whether you live in Hancock County or the city of Findlay, is right now liable for all the pollution that's downtown. And I'll explain that in a little bit. Secondly, I'm also going to show you how the reg works as tightly as I can. It's not going to be easy. We're going to talk about the levels that are down there and a couple of other things. So let's go ahead and get started. This is my name, Tom Ross. This is my phone number, 419-306-1265. Please take it. I'm happy to talk to anybody, anytime. Take it with you. I'm on Facebook, but I'm not on there a lot. Okay, let's start at the beginning. Now this is confusing, and I will tell you, you need several dips, so you're just going to have to bear with me and understand. And if I put you to sleep, just throw something at me. All right, let's start at the very beginning. There's something called CERCLA. It's the Comprehensive Emergency Response Cleanup Liabilities Act. Passed in 73, I think they enacted it. It says CERCLA Tom Ross, sorry. It doesn't look right. So CERCLA was enacted because the world was a bad place. Let's just call it what it is. Many, you're familiar with Love Canal? You ever hear of that? Anybody? Show of hands. Love Canal? No? You ever hear the Cuyahoga River catching fire? Okay, for many years, industry dumped stuff everywhere that they wanted. We know this. And in fact, our green space downtown is a direct result of that. It was a chrome plating operation and had an open spigot in the bath. in the chrome plating bath. The electrolytic solution, they opened a drain, it went right to dirt. They did it for years and years and years. They had another drain that went to the river. People just did things, and it wasn't good for the world. So CERCLA came about. Now, CERCLA is important to know because it establishes all the environmental liability for everything else. It's the basis by which everything works. EPA cites, and their authority to cite comes from CERCLA, essentially. They have many acts underneath the EPA, but most of the time it's under CERCLA that they can cite under the hazardous waste stuff. So under CERCLA, we have a few acts we're going to talk about. We're going to briefly talk about. And the MPDS program. None of these you need to know. I'm just showing you there's a lot of stuff out there. Now, at the end of the day, everything in this business, every single thing, no matter how you look at it, how you break it down, or what your background is, you need to learn this. Because it applies to the downtown project. Material and activity. Let me say it again. Material and activity. What do I got? And what am I doing with it? This is important because this is where CERCLA comes in. You see, all those things that we just talked about, Cuyahoga River and the Fernal site and all the Bethlehem Steel projects over in Pittsburgh, all those things have one thing in common. They disposed of stuff illegally. They disposed of it. Trying to understand this concept. This is where it gets confusing. They got out of the container it was supposed to be in, whether intentionally or unintentionally. It went to the ground. When it goes to the ground, CERCLA liability kicks in, whether it was ongoing, whether it was now, or it's historical. Because CERCLA liability works like this. It's joint, it's strict, it's several, and it's forever. You're stuck with it. Once you become the generator of that waste, either by spilling it on the ground or your industry generates it as a byproduct of your process, once it gets out of the container it's supposed to be in, or you generate it, you have waste, and you're subject to the law. Now, here's the question. How do you know you're subject to the law? CERCLA was amended, I don't remember what year it was now, 83. It was right when Bill Clinton was in office. They amended CERCLA for SARA. This is the Superfund Authorization Act. So they reauthorized it. During that process, they recognized that there were lists of lists out there. So how do you know the chemical you have is bad? So you see all these reports that come out, and it's online, and they say, oh, there's stuff down there, and they call it dimethyl death, or hexavalent chrome, or whatever you want to talk about. There's all kinds of stuff down there, right? Is it bad for me? How do we even know? You can say anything you want, but is it really bad for me? And the answer is everything that they found down there is bad for you, just so you know. You need to know that. It's all bad. Every bit of it. And why? Because it's on this list. Not only does it have a health effect, which you'll see in a minute, but it's on this list. And here's the important part. There's a list of RCRA chemicals, and they're called hazardous waste. Remember, it's material and activity. So this is hazardous waste. And there's a list of those. And then the Clean Water Act is called marine pollutants. And they're regulated under the MPDS program. There's another list of stuff. They're all bad. They're bad for the water. The Clean Air Act, the hazardous air pollutants, there's 189 of them. They're all bad for the air. It gets out of the container it's supposed to be in. Refineries are notorious for this. We emit stuff. It's just what we do, man. We can't help it. There's the Federal Insecticide, Fungicide Act. That's the bad stuff. That's the chemicals you put on the ground. That's the bugs and the insecticides and the stuff that kills. The TSCA, Toxic Substance Control Act. There's a list of those. There's only 6 of those, by the way. It's an interesting thing to note. 6 chemicals are regulated, but those 6 chemicals are still regulated. Asbestos being one of those. They're subject to TSCA. I know. This is boring. Give me a second. I'm going somewhere. Okay. There's more. But all those lists came together, and they call it the list of lists. It's called Tier 2 list. And it's a list of lists. It's every chemical that's out there that's bad for you. You want to understand that. So it doesn't matter what activity it is, this stuff's still regulated. When it's sitting in a drum right in your building, and you're using a drum of benzene for your process, it's regulated by OSHA. OSHA could be because it's protecting people. When I'm done with the drum, and if I spill it and it gets in the waterway, it's regulated by the Clean Water Act and CERCLA. But if I open the drum and it emits, that's a hazardous air pollutant. It's regulated under the Clean Air Act and CERCLA liability. I'm oversimplifying this, by the way, it's much deeper than this. Phosphorus, same thing. Tosca, same thing. When it gets out of the container it's supposed to be in, that's the important part. It's when it's spilled, okay? Now, this is the part that gets confusing. Have you ever heard of Superfund? Any of you? Okay, Superfund. So what does that mean? Well, when CERCLA came about, it came about because you couldn't go after anybody. A lot of these companies were dead. They weren't around anymore. The board of directors have long since passed away. There were these sites all over the country. Terrible sites, terrible pollution. Nobody to go after. So CERCLA said, we've established environmental liability. You're on the hook, chemical company XYZ, for the cleanup and for any ancillary medical expenses and any cleanup associated with it and disposal. You're on the hook. Now, why is that important? Because, don't put you to sleep, I'm sorry guys. Give me a minute. I know this is hard to teach. It's really hard to teach. We're getting there. I'm sorry. Okay. So just remember, the liability piece, when there's nobody to go after, CERCLA kicks in. We identify the site, it's called a super fund. There's this massive fund that's funded from all sorts of things, gasoline tax being one of them. Every time you buy gasoline, you dump into that fund, which, by the way, is a good idea because a lot of the sites are oil spills. But that super fund kicks in to clean them up. That's historical contamination. And that's essentially, and that liability is so strong that CERCLA says, remember, joint, strict, several, and forever. So what they're saying is, we can go after your heirs if your heirs were part of that process. If your mom or dad or grandma or grandpa started a business plating operation, let's use that example since that seems to be the hot button right now. That's the term. If mom and dad had a plating operation, you can be charged. You can be responsible fiduciarily for all the cleanup and for all the regulatory compliance issues associated with it. You don't have a choice. That's the law. The law is written. It's one of the strongest laws written. There is. There are very few laws written stronger than CERCLA. Very few. One of the few laws, the Wartime Powers Act. There's only like 10 laws that are stronger. Think about the Wartime Powers Act. You can seize anything you want. You can do anything you want. So it's very strong liability. Okay. Now you understand there's a list of chemicals. Right? You know where they come from. You know they're regulated because they're on this list. That's what we look for when we go out on these sites and try to figure out if it's bad for you. What do we got? Well, these are the test results. Mercury, arsenic, barium, cadmium, chromium, lead, selenium, acetone, 2-butanone, hexavalent chrome, everybody knows about. What do these all have in common? These are heavy metals. Heavy metals are forever chemicals. They stay in the aquifer, and they stay in your body if you ingest them. They stay in your system. Mercury, central nervous system activator. Makes you crazy. Mad Hatters disease, you heard it? Because the Hatters use mercury to cure the Hats. That's mercury. Arsenic, well, that's the old bottle trick, by the way. Arsenic looks like a glass of water. You know, back in the day, my dad used to tell me stories in Pittsburgh. He'd have a glass of water, look like a glass of water, walk by and trip and spill it on somebody. It goes and sucks into your skin, bonds with your hemoglobin, you suffocate from the inside out, you die. Barium, cadmium, chromium, lead, you know what lead is? Lead's everywhere. There's lead down at the site from old gas stations and old tanks. We believe, based on my historical research, it's tetramethyl lead. What does lead do? Does anybody know? Does anybody want to take a shot? Is anybody still awake? Raise your hands if you're not awake. This guy won't smile at me, man. He's mad. That was a good one. Come on, man. New material? All right, too soon? What's that?
It gets into your blood, doesn't it?
Yeah, it attacks your bloodstream. It gets in your bone marrow.
Yeah.
Yeah, it gets in your bone marrow. It's like benzene. It also causes leukemia. It's also central nervous system activator. What about hexchrome? Anybody know about that?
Yeah, nerve blockage.
That's sort of sensationalized, but it is legitimate. What does hexchrome do? Does anybody know?
That I don't know.
Hexavalent chrome is a teratogenic and a mutagenic. It's a forever chemical. When it gets in your system, it attacks women of childbearing age. It mutates the genome in the fetus. If she's pregnant, it also mutates the genome in the egg. And the mutagenic piece of it means that the genome modifier is passed on to every generation forever. 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 That mutation, if that woman reproduces and that child reproduces, that genome, doesn't matter whether it's male or female, will be passed on forever. It's a forever chemical, and it's a mutagenic, very bad thing. It's one of the top 20 chemicals that we regulate. All right, let's get back to this. So, how does this work? Now, Just so you know, all waste is regulated. If you throw it away, it's regulated by the federal government. Did you know that? Did you know that? So if I throw this away, it's regulated by the federal government. When they passed the Resource Conservation Recovery Act, that's RCRA, in 1975, they had two goals in mind. They passed it in an extremely punitive manner, which I'm going to explain to you why that's a big deal to us as the common citizen in Findlay. Very, very punitive. Jail time, 10 years in prison, $250,000 per day per violation. I mean, they hammered it. It was bad. They went after it because they wanted to stop the big polluters in the world from doing what they were doing. They wanted to stop the steel mills from dumping it in the river in Pittsburgh. You know, my dad, in the middle of the night, he was a steel worker for 38 years. They'd go get a truck from a junkyard, a tanker, and they'd take all those spent pickle liquors out of the chrome or the steel baths, the pickling agent, and they'd wait for a rainy night. And he'd get down the road and the back roads in Pennsylvania and open the valves up and dump it. Did it for 20 years. They paid him a lot extra. They did a lot in the old days. That's why it's such a serious act. All right, so when you generate waste, you throw it away. That's the trigger. That's when you're in. Now, throwing it away is two definitions. When you throw it away, there's intentional throwing it away. And you got two paths to go. If I throw that away, that's municipal waste. It's not a hazardous waste. Why? Or chemical that I worry about because it's not on the list of lists. It isn't. Now, there are characteristic things. I'm not going to get into that because it's too deep. There's a list of lists. It only goes two paths. In order to stay legal, in order to be in compliance with the law, it only goes two paths. It goes to a subtitle C. There's three, really. Nobody ever does it. And D. You understand? That's municipal landfill. That's Hancock County landfill. You cannot cross the streams. Or subtitle C landfill. It can go off for recycling, which is encouraged. Spent fuel products often go off for recycling. So we take stuff from a tank that we've used now as tank bottom or something, we'll send it off for a spent fuel product when we go to Marathon. They'll blend it, they'll make a solvent out of it, or they'll make a fuel that they can use. It's not 100% recyclable. We're not going to get into that because it's too deep for you. Okay, why is this a big deal? Well, the driver for RCRA, when it was passed, it got its authority from CERCLA. When it was passed, the driver was what? Think about this. We're throwing it away. What are we trying to protect the most? When you throw something away, what happens? Where does it go? Trying to protect groundwater. That is the overall intent of RCRA, to protect groundwater. Really, that's the intent of CERCLA. It's here to clean them up and protect groundwater. The important piece here, though, is that all waste is regulated. It doesn't matter where it goes. It doesn't matter who's throwing it away. It doesn't matter. Now, if you throw away waste in this category, you're just a regular person, but you're regulated. Under the Emergency Planning and Community Right to Know Act, which is a subset of SARA, can you throw a gallon of paint in a landfill?
No.
So you're regulated. The EPA, this is one of the few places EPA is a touch point. You can regulate it. You can't throw, it's a total liquids ban. It's called a total liquids ban in a landfill. You're not allowed to throw your waste. You're not allowed to throw your ethylene glycol or your used oil or your spent paint products or your insecticides or whatever spent stuff you have laying around the house. You're not allowed to do that. You're also not allowed to dump it down the drain, are you? The city of Findlay water treatment system is going to have a fit, aren't they? And they rightly well, they should. Shouldn't be dumping that stuff down the drain. It's bad. It kills the bugs. It's bad. The stuff is regulated. It's bad, and it's controlled from what we call cradle to grave, but it's a wrong implication because it implies that when it gets to the grave, that you're no longer responsible. So let's get into that. That's the piece I want to talk about and dive into. Now, here's the interesting piece, and this is the law. When you generate hazardous waste, you get designation. You have to apply for an EPA ID number if your industry generates hazardous waste. You also have to apply for an EPA ID number if you don't already have one. If you spill any of those chemicals, if it gets out of the container it's supposed to be in, it doesn't matter where it's at. It doesn't matter. If it gets out of the container it's supposed to be in, you're in trouble. You realize that. If it's on the list and it's above one of the action limits, you got to call the National Response Center. You got to self-report. We got a couple hours to do it. And by the way, everybody comes. If it hits water, the Coast Guard shows up. The National Response Center is manned by the U.S. Coast Guard. So the hazardous waste, you become a generator. Now, here's where it gets interesting. And I want you to understand this. This is the part where I'm going to try and wake you back up. I know this is so boring. I'm sorry. You know, imagine how fun I am at parties. I do this for a living, you know? Seriously. All right. When you become a generator, whether by choice or by accident, in other words, it got out of the container it was supposed to be in, it went to the ground, it was spilled. That is disposal. Intentional or otherwise, the law says it got out of the container it was supposed to be in, sir. You disposed of a known waste, even if it was a raw material feedstock, even if it was pure virgin acetone. The second it gets out of the container it's supposed to be in, it's disposal. It now, if it's one of the chemicals on the list, instantaneously becomes a hazardous waste. So what do we have downtown? We have a whole list of materials that got out of the container they were supposed to be in. And what I tell you, CERCLA is joint, strict, several, and what else? Forever. Why is that a big deal? Perfect example. If we have three gentlemen right here. What's your name, sir? Would you be willing to tell me?
Don.
All right, Don. Thank you, Don. You're giving me dirty looks, man. I don't know what.
Well, you only asked me.
Well, it's about that.
Is that because you know everybody else and I'm a stranger?
No, you're not. No, Don, I'm sorry.
Okay,
I was picking on you. What's your
thank
name,
you.
young fella? Sir, what's your name?
Steve.
Steve. Mr. Steve, Mr. Don?
Sean.
Sean. I don't know. I just wonder about you. So you three gentlemen, all three of you contribute drums. And it goes, you follow the rules, you manifest it, you have an EPID number, and it goes to a site. And that site does something stupid with it. Here's the question. It's a TSDF. It's a regulated site. They have an EPA ID number. They're monitored by EPA. They have $10 million bonded insurance in $1986. They have water monitoring. There's a whole host. All their people are trained. They do something stupid with it. Who do you think is liable for the cleanup? Which one of you? You have 100 drums of dimethyl death. You have 10 drums of dimethyl death. No, you have 10 drums of acetone. You have 50 drums.
Depends how much money we have.
Well, that's one of the factors, unfortunately. Money does talk, but who's responsible? Well, all right, but who's responsible under CERCLA law, joint, strict, several, and forever? Who can EPA name? Who has environmental liability? Who has environmental liability? It's joint, strict, several, and forever. So they can name him, that's strict. You're cleaning it up. It's on your dime, doesn't matter. Or they can name you. You only had 10 drums, but you're the big pocket. You're going to clean up. By the way, Marathon has multiple lawsuits of this from 25 years ago that I settled. Same thing. 10 drums went to a site. There were several hundred there. The TSDF wasn't a reputable site. It was an accident that went there. I shouldn't have gone there. We ended up cleaning it all up. Here's strict. That's you. You clean it up only. Here's joint. You two. You're out. Go home. You're lucky dead. And here's several. All three of you. Joint, strict, several, forever. That's how it works. That's how liability works. Now, why is this important to us? You're saying, wow, Tom, this is great. Man, gosh, you're a great public speaker and so handsome. No, too much.
It's the early hair that does it.
I know, right? I miss my hair. I really do. Phantom hair, I rub my head, and it never comes back. All right, why is this a big deal to us? And let me illustrate it even further. Once you're the generator, either by choice or, wait for it, if you're dumb enough, naive enough, or arrogant enough to purchase a property that you didn't do your due diligence on. You know where I'm going, right?
Yeah.
If you purchase a property that has historical contamination on it, it doesn't matter when the spill was, because it's joint, strict, several, and what? Forever. If you purchase it without doing due diligence, without setting monies aside with the previous owner, if you can find them and saying, look, you're responsible for all the environmental liability, you own it, here's the money I want set aside in bonded monies in case something happens, in case somebody gets sick, in case it gets out of the container it's supposed to be in case it shows up in somebody's well, you are on the hook. You now are what? You're the generator. Why is that a big deal to us now? Because what did the county commissioners do and what did the mayor do? They transferred properties without doing due diligence. We forced them to do the sampling. We shamed them into it. All Christian. Good thing, holy frish.
Yes.
And I'm going to tell you more here why it's an even bigger deal. They purchased properties that had known historical contamination. Actually unknown. In some cases, much of it's unknown until they did the phase 1 site assessment. Tried to transfer them before they even did that. Phase 1 is nothing more than going out and just doing historical research and saying, oh wait, this was a chrome plating operation. Oh wait, there was a gas station here. There's probably tetramethyl lead. Oh wait, there was a dry cleaner here. There's probably trichloroethane, trichloroethene. All those things should have been done before it ever transferred. Because now,
So then the commissioners are on the hook too.
yep, the commissioners and the city, but it gets better. It gets worse.
Or we know. So
Okay, and let me illustrate it even more. Let's do a scenario here so you understand it. So let's say that we clean it up. We're out there digging up drums of dimethyl death, hexavalent whatever you want to call it, and you put it in a drum. You have an EPA ID number because you have to clean it up. Under CERCLA, the law says you got to clean it up if you're going to touch it and dig. We put it on a drum, several of them. We put the drum on a hazardous waste hauler's truck because everybody in the chain has to be licensed, even the TSDF. And let's take it even more. Let me show you how strong the liability is. That truck driver has a hazmat certificate. He's DOT certified. He's got his hazmat, but he's drunk. And he goes down the road and he wrecks. And the stuff that's on there gets out of the container it's supposed to be in. Now, let's see how smart you are for paying attention. Who is liable? Who has the environmental liability for both the cleanup and any damage? And by the way, it gets better. Remember, once it's on that list, and it's a hazardous waste because you're throwing it away, whether by spill, by accident, the stuff and anything it touches is now hazardous waste. So one drop of hazardous waste, manifested hazardous waste or characterized hazardous waste, and 1 million gallons of water equals what? 1 million gallons of hazardous waste. That's the law, because they used it's called the mixture rule, and they used to try to hide stuff. Bad guys would say, well, the solution to pollution is dilution. We'll just dilute it. We'll dump it in a pond, and it no longer exhibits characteristic, or it's below the parts per million, or everybody cheated. It was bad. It was a bunch of bad players. Back to our scenario. Back to our scenario. Who's on the hook? Who's on the hook for the cleanup and any enforcement? Because, by the way,
I vote for Sean.
I can't throw that guy under the bus. He just
wrong.
Look at this guy over here. You know, you'd be great in the waste business. You just run by organized crime, right? You'd be a good guy in that. Whack that guy. Throw him in a barrel.
Are we in a democracy or a republic here? In this-
I don't look like you'd be a mutant here. I don't know. What's the scenario? What happens? Who's liable?
Everybody.
That's interesting. So is the driver liable?
Yes.
In civil court, he is. And he's also going to lose his hazmat certificate. I get that. Is he responsible or liable for the environmental liability? Is the hazmat company, who has an EPA ID number, they're a transporter. In order to transport hazardous waste, you have to have an EPA ID number and you have to sign a manifest. Are they liable?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Interesting. Really?
They hired the guy.
Oh, okay. So your contracts person's liable.
Stantec? Is Stantec liable?
No, Stantec doesn't involve in this hunt. They are not drivers. The answer is the generator is always liable. Always.
But wouldn't it eventually go back to them? if
That's
they're done
civil
with
court.
it?
That's your insurance company. That's
Yeah.
civil court. That's not how environmental liability works. Environmental liability is joint, strict, several, and forever. You own it the second you generate it, or you're dumb enough to buy it. You own it forever. And it implies, it says cradle to grave, right? The term is cradle to grave. That's a misnomer. When it gets to the TSDF, it's a treatment, storage, disposal facility. We just had that discussion. What happens if they mishandle it? What happens if their forklift driver is drunk and it gets out of the container it's supposed to be in with an accident? It goes in the creek. Or creek, if you're not from Pittsburgh, forgive me. Or aluminum, not aluminum, if you're not from Pittsburgh, forgive me. What happens? Who's liable? The generator is always liable. Once you generate a waste, you get an EPA ID number that's attached to that waste into perpetuity. It's the social security number for that waste. Why is that important to us for this discussion? Why? Think about it. So the city took, and the county took property without doing their due diligence, didn't they?
Suckers.
They knew it was hazardous waste or suspected that they did it anyway. When they took ownership of that property, the second they touched it, they actually became the generator of record. And that's why we have an EPA ID number posted down at the Rome or Superior Chrome Plating site, because we had to haul that waste off. That's ours. So what does that mean for you as a citizen? Because those elected officials operated on your behalf and took property without asking your permission. And some might argue illegally. I'm not going to go down that road. They can fight that fight in court.
Do those elected officials have any more liability than the average citizen? You say
Maybe.
they're acting in
However,
our behalf, but a lot of us disagree with what they're doing and we don't trust them.
well, you got to vote. I don't know what to tell you. You got to
I know,
vote. But
but-
remember how this works. When they took possession of those properties, they put every single person in both Hancock County and the city of Findlay on the hook for the environmental liability because we own their public spaces. We own them. We own them. We're on the hook for the environmental liability. And how long? Forever. So let's say we clean it up to what's called a VAP standard, which by the way is a great program. I've used it 1,000 times myself. I've used the Brownfield program. Every one of these things has a limit. All those chemicals. It says if it gets out of the container it's supposed to be in, this is the action limit. This is it. It can't be higher than that, or you have to clean it up. Now, the VAP standard says, which is a great program again for commercial and industrial properties. It's a wonderful program, by the way. I've used it myself. We've cleaned up fuel stations. It says you can clean it up instead of to this level, you can clean it up to this level, and now you can put commercial facilities on it, for example. Brownfield's the same way. We used it, there was a buster rule under the Brownfield. We used it for a tank end program. Think of all the old gas stations you knew from a kid growing up, all those old tanks in the ground, nobody around to take care of them. You know, mom and pop shops, they either pass away, the kids don't want it. Those tanks had to be yanked. We used the buster rule under that. Buried underground storage tanks where there money's available. Same as the VAP program, it's a way out. Now, here's the point that's important under VAP that you need to remember. It's a wonderful program, and it alleviates you from environmental liability for the initial release immediately. You say, you go to EPA or whoever's administering it this week and you say, hey, we screwed up. We bought a property. We were dumb. We didn't do our due diligence. We need help. And they say, well, okay, what are you going to do with it? And you say, well, build something. I don't know what. And they give you a limit. And you come to a consent decree with these people. And you hit that limit. Now, the mayor, bless her heart, intentional or unwittingly has been going around and telling everybody that the site's clean. It's not actually clean. It's clean to the VAP standard. But clean, by definition, is CERCLA. That's background. So they throw the term residential around, which, by the way, there's different levels under the VAP program versus Brownfield versus RCRA versus CERCLA. There's a lot of terminology, but the bottom line is the site isn't clean. When they're done with it, it's not going to be clean. They're going to put a little cap on it with a little membrane barrier, which we've used 1,000,000 times before on industrial properties to stop groundwater, slow down groundwater from pushing up. It's not clean. If you're going to build a park on it, and you're going to build 300 low-income housing units directly north of it, which is what they're going to do no matter what they tell you. I've seen the drawings, they're already stamped and ready to go. This isn't clean. It's a fantastic program. Anybody that administers it has done a fantastic job, but it's not what we need. We need CERCLA. We need it cleaned up to background standards to do it right. Now, let me illustrate. I want to show you something. Some of the stuff that's in here. I already talked about some of the health effects associated with this stuff. You know, maybe now's a good time to stop and take some questions before we dive into some of your stuff. Would that be okay with it? Or if anybody needs to run to the restroom, or if you need to, you know, like the drool off from snoring. Mike back there is ready to fall asleep. If you'd like, I can answer questions now for a little bit. Maybe we can try and sort some stuff out. Maybe help you understand it, because it's confusing. Yes?
Okay, so the property originally was city councilman's property who was dying and wanted it out of his name before his children inherited it.
Yeah, Bob Bauman, he was smart. He and his
Yeah,
partner
so
were
he
very
was smart enough to like get rid of it and let me donate this to you. Let me do you a favor.
Yep.
Where does his liability go?
Once you transfer that property in ownership to somebody else, without doing due diligence. Due diligence means you're going to sample it, you're going to review the history of it, you're going to determine the plume, you're going to delineate. It's called delineating the plume. The amount of pollution that's under the ground or anywhere else. And you're going to set aside money. You get somebody that has a brain to come in and go, that does this for a living, and go, that's going to cost you about $2 million to clean it up. So you're going to have that money set aside, or you're going to have an agreement that says the purchase price is $0, I'll take the liability on the property. He transferred it in deed and title. Once it's transferred in deed and title, you own it, you become what? The generator. Once you're the generator, whether it's historical spill or not, you're on the hook for joint, strict, several, and how often? How long?
Forever.
You're getting it.
After they tore the building down and they were told never to take the foundation up,
Yeah.
whose decision was it to step in and, oh, let's take this foundation up and open the can of worms, so to speak?
Well, the decision was from the project manager who works for the Maumee Watershed District, Conservancy District. His name is Steve Wilson, and he's the former landfill engineer. So he's the one that worked in the landfill and designed the landfill, and he's the one that pretty much made that decision. Now, we shamed him because they tore the building down without sampling the building. And hexavalent chrome has a nasty characteristic of turning to dust, and it'll stick to brick, it'll stick to mortar, it'll stick to walls, it sticks to stuff. We have some experience with this. And they tore it down, and of course they didn't use wet methods, which is required by the law. When you have a dust, it could be potential. So they blew a plume of dust right across the entire green space and right over the river and towards downtown. I saw it, I witnessed it, I have pictures of it, I have video. So we contacted US EPA, and then they came back and told Mr. Wilson that he needed to not do it that way, he needed to follow the rules, and he did. He brought in this guy that borrowed the bulldozer from. King Environmental, excellent company, by the way. So happy they showed up. They did everything right, they're a good company, they're good people. So then they started tearing it down. They finished the tear down from another third-party contractor, but then King Environmental did the remediation. So they dug down and pulled everything out that even remotely resembled hexavalent chrome. Now, at the same time, and this is the part you should be scared of, if you understand hydrology, that's the key to this project, because the hydrology showed us that there was a tremendous amount of green, nasty water loaded with hex chrome, which turns green in regular water, in H2O, and they pumped out about 15,000 gallons of it, took it all off as hazardous waste, and then they stopped and filled the hole in. It didn't stop the water from migrating, it didn't stop the pollution from moving around, and I guarantee you it's not cleaned up yet. In fact, we know this for a fact from many marathon spills that happened over limestone beds and shale beds. There's something called a karst formation, K-A-R-S-T. They're fissures in the rock, and that's how you get your drinking water if you live out in the country. We're sitting on bedrock, 300-400 feet of it right now. When you drill your well, you're not drilling down into dirt, you're drilling down into bedrock. And the water migrates to the well. The easiest point, water goes to the easiest point, it's kind of common sense, and you pump it out. That's the same principle for this piece, because hexavalent chrome has an affinity to stay in solution. In fact, that's how it's used in the chrome plating operation, that electrolytic bath. You put an electrode on one end and an anode on the other end, and you dip it in there and hit it with electricity, and it adheres. It's in solution. It comes out of solution to stick there. You got a positive and a negative. So, yes, Mike. I'm sorry, Mike put his hand up.
Say that bath that she's saying is clean, but say they built this park, 5 years go by. There's kids in there playing, whether it's true or untrue. Somebody comes up with this situation that my kid has a tumor, or
Yeah.
is the city then liable?
Yes. Yes.
And
We're liable forever. Everybody in Hancock County and the city of Findlay is liable forever for any pollution that's left there, because we bought it and it's public ground. We own it. You own it. I own it. You own it. Public ground. We're liable.
Private lawsuits could come from anybody.
Well, that's civil. I'm talking about environmental liability. That's civil. Civil could go on for 50 years.
So that depends on what the judge says.
Yeah, it could go on for 50, it could go on for 100. There are lawsuits for Bethlehem Steel that went out of business 60 years ago that are still on the books, still trying to be settled for people that had illness, yes. But it's latent. Oh, forgive me, 1 second. Hexavalent chrome and most of the stuff on here have latent effects. That's the piece you need to understand. It's not acute. It's not like getting burned with nitric acid. Boom, you see it, you feel it, it's bad, it hurts, it's nasty. It's latent effect. It builds up in your system. Or you get a piece in your system, your body can't do anything with it. Just remember, metals can neither be created nor destroyed. God made that. The good Lord, praise His name, that's how He built the earth. Everything that's here has been here and always will be here. That's it. Atoms are here. Metals can neither be created nor destroyed. It gets in your body can't break it down. It's in the environment can't break it down. It's not like an organic, which over time can break down. An enzymatic reaction. You were going to ask me a question, ma'am.
Yeah, you're talking about the dust and all going over the river and all, and our drinking water comes from what effect has what they've already done or what they propose to do, would you guess?
I don't
Well,
know.
thank
Ma'am, I don't
you.
know. You know, all I did was get a video of it because I was working and had to get back to work. But understand this, groundwater pressure moves. When the river's up, it shoves everything this way. When the river's down, it creates a draw. As water moves, it creates a vacuum and it pulls the stuff with it. It goes into the river. It could have already been in our drinking water because I can tell you this, our drinking water permit, our NPDES permit in the Clean Water Act for Findlay doesn't treat for hex chrome. We're not reacting it out. We're not treating for hex chrome. All we have, we treat for the basic organics. They do a great job, by the way, but they weren't told it's there.
Our drinking water comes from the reservoir, though, which is upstream and filled upstream of that.
But it pulls out of the ranch as well. Yeah, it is.
It is, but well upstream.
Quite a bit, yeah.
So we're just affecting the people in what, Putnam County?
No,
Wow.
it's
And- and-
remember,
clarifying.
What's
solutions, never
the next
digested.
town down the road? You know, like it's not like just because it didn't go backwards into our reservoir,
Here's
it's going to
something-
end up in somebody's drinking water.
Well, the other thing you need to remember is this. Here's something else that's really fascinating about metals in the environment. When it gets out of the container it's supposed to be in, even with liability, one of the most interesting things is natural affinity. Plants pick up metals. Anybody here smoke? Ever smoke? Did you ever notice on the package what they told you was in it? Cadmium, chromium, arsenic, barium, selenium, all the metals. Why? Tobacco plants have a natural affinity to pick it up. They pick up the metal and they keep it in there. Now what happens? This is why you can't eat, you want to hear why you can't eat fish, walleye from Lake Erie? Here's exactly why. The coal-fired plants all along Lake Erie. One of the things that coal emits is mercury. It's a dense metal. It goes up in the air, it goes down, it washes out in the rain, and it goes to the bottom of the lake. And the little plants pick it up. They pick it up naturally out of the soil. That's what they do. The little fish, bunches of little fish eat those plants, and it concentrates in the little fish. Then the next size predator eats this many fish, and it concentrates up. And then the next size predator eats it up. When it gets to the top, the apex predator, it's a big pyramid. It pushed up because the metals never go away. They neither be created, nor destroyed, nor digested. They stay in the tissue forever until you die. And then the metals go back to the earth and they get picked up again. Yes?
When they dug all that up over here initially, before he got stopped, where did they haul all that hazardous material to?
I'm afraid to say it out loud. Mr. Wilson took it to the subtitle D municipal landfill. Without a manifest, without sampling, without control. He's told me that personally, sir. Okay? He told me that.
Are you talking about the building itself, not the actual soil? Are you talking about the building itself?
In the building. It was loaded with asbestos too, so they had to mitigate the asbestos, which they did. They did. They called in a contractor, it was asbestos certified. Now here's the other thing you got to remember. To touch this stuff, to just touch it, you have to be trained. There's a standard called HAZWOPER. It requires 40 hours of training to understand the chemical, what you're dealing with, how to protect yourself, how to protect your buddy, what people need to wear, what air controls are necessary, what you have to do to make sure that you don't get exposed above any of the action limits to a chemical. OSHA regulates that. One of the chemical lists, oh, I forgot OSHA. Look at that. Our friends at OSHA. Don't tell them. OSHA has a chemical list too. It's the disease tables. Interestingly enough, they don't amend their list hardly ever because the very OSHA is an act. It takes an act of Congress to amend it, so they don't amend it much. Whereas these, they're done by administration. They're able to amend them as they go. Anyway, back to what I was saying. I lost my train. Everybody on that site has to be HAZWOPER trained. Period. There's no exception. None. It's the law. You have to teach your people how to handle stuff. You have to teach them how to do it safely, and you have to keep them from being exposed. That's the law, and it ought to be the law. We shouldn't be exposing anybody to crap.
So theoretically, those city workers could all sue everybody, you know, who owns land in Findlay because they were told to clean it up without being properly trained.
It's entirely possible if that's the way the lawsuit went, but you have to remember the other thing. Nobody underwrites environmental liability.
We
There's
don't
no
have-
such thing as an insurance policy for environmental liability.
And Findlay has no environmental insurance. That came out at the council meeting. There is no environmental insurance in Findlay.
Now, Jeff's over here cackling, and he's saying he sees it all the time, but did you ever read the fine print on that? What does it say? If you violate the regulation, you're in trouble, and you know that.
There's insurance for everything, it's what you want to pay for.
Well, Lloyd's of London is the only one I'm aware of that still writes it. I don't know of anybody else, and I deal in the insurance world all the time for the environmental people. My people have all kinds of insurance.
We don't want to get it on our.
At council meeting, they said, at council meeting, it was
Right.
totally stated, Findlay, Ohio has no environmental insurance.
By the fiduciary
And
for
that
the
was
city,
right.
Jim Stashak. He
That
said it
was
on the record.
totally
Well, what's the answer? He
straight.
said you could argue it. Is it yes or no? I mean, what's the answer?
The answer is there's nobody that underwrites environmental liability that pays for this. If it gets out of the container it's supposed to be in, you can't buy insurance for I bought a property and I was too stupid to do my due diligence. You can't.
So it's not unusual for the city to not have insurance for liabilities.
Why would they be in the hazardous waste business? Why on earth are they in the hazardous waste business? We have no business being a generator. They should have called in private investors and got private investors. See, that's the problem. The people that are waiting to develop the area, I get the sneaking suspicion they knew that there was waste there a problem, and they wanted the city taxpayer to be on the hook for it. So I say this, if everybody's so sure that that the VAT standard is good enough, I can draw up an indemnification clause today that the mayor and anybody else that thinks that everything is hokey-dokey can sign, and we will transfer in deed and title and environmental liability, all of it to them. I wonder if anybody would be willing to do that.
Well, that's a good point then.
Oh yeah, the guy who wrote the letter should,
Put
right?
City council, put city
Yeah,
council.
just
on
sign
it.
that.
Whoever's willing to do it, they're so confident in what's going, that this will fix all the problem and nothing's gonna be left. Let's have them do it. Put them on the hook instead of us.
So then you
I'm
ask
sorry,
the-
Susan.
So Tom, you bought property in that area. Have
Sure
you
did.
tested your property yet? And what standard do you include your property to?
I don't have to clean my property up because I'm not touching the dirt.
You're just gonna let it sit. The properties, all that is already contaminated.
All the way through, all the way
We
through.
already are liable because we live in the county.
Yeah,
Your group, investment group, is liable for what's on your property.
we are.
So the only thing really we can do at this point in time,
Please clean it up to
It's the
background
best.
standard.
the best of our ability to clean it up.
No,
Did you do a phase one before you bought your property?
I did.
What did it say?
It's none of your business, it's my private
I'm
property.
just curious. I
It's
just-
my
Did you
private
use-
property.
did you use tax
I
dollars to
don't tell
buy
you
it?
About my property, I only tell you about the ones that you put me on the hook for. And the bottom line is, as long as I don't touch it, I don't have to do anything. However, if the city touches my property, it's called the common enemy law. If they divert floodwaters onto my property, I'm going to sue them. If the city diverts any chemicals onto my property, I'm going to sue them under the statute. You know why? Because they can't contaminate, cross-contaminate somebody else's property. So I'm not going to, I'm not going down the
I'm
road.
just curious.
I know it's on my property, so don't worry. I'm very good at what I do. Yes.
My technical question, what I'd like to understand is how far do all those chemicals go down? And what kind of exposure do we have when we've been benching into the sides of the river? Are we just sending those chemicals down the river to Putnam County and everybody else down there?
Every time you stir that up, that's wash off. When they left that pad there, they didn't wash the pad, it was covered in hexachrome. It washed off, washed straight down to the river, we had heavy rains.
So
And it's been doing it for years. The problem is it's been doing it forever. The stuff that's upstream, up Clinton Court and north of Clinton Court, there's contamination up there. They just haven't done the sampling grid correctly. When they delineate it, when they start punching holes in the grid pattern and delineate the plume up there, I think you're going to find a lot more. They stumbled on some, Steve Wilson said on the record, I told him in a meeting, and when I went to council, I spoke and said, look, there's underground storage tanks up there, and for a fact there is. We have some historical data that shows that. But we didn't find that in phase one. There's no underground storage tanks. But on the record, gave me an email, called me a liar. Guess what they found? Underground storage tanks. So, you know, Do the right thing. Stop playing politics. Get out of the politics. Clean it up. $3 million. We'll clean that site up. Almost the background. Do the right thing. Then you can build whatever you want. Take $3 million from that stupid bridge, for God's sakes. Idiot. Whatever. Take money from that and clean it up. Do the right thing. How hard is that? Where's the ethical and moral standards of our elected officials? They know darn well, no matter what they say, they know this isn't going to work. They know there's still pollution and contamination, and they know there's no way to cap that. The only thing that caps it is in situ vitrification. You sink electrodes and you turn it to glass. That's it. It's the only thing that's going to stop it from migrating. Anybody that tells you different is lying to you. You're trying to sell you something.
So they say they're gonna clean it down to 2 feet. Is that far enough?
No.
Of course not.
Well, they found hex chrome all the way to bedrock when they were in.
Exactly. So how can they say that they have cleaned the property and made it safe? And if they're going to build this, $8 million bridge, they're gonna have to put in footers and all that stuff a lot deeper than 2 feet.
Well, what they said was, we'll just react as we go. You don't do environmental projects that way. You don't do environmental, well, Steve Wilson's on the record, he's the project manager, he said that. And I guess in his defense, he didn't have a lot of money. They tackled this project without doing their homework first. Had they done their true due diligence, they would have realized, we don't want to take these properties. We have a problem. Had they done the project planning right, like we do, like environmental professionals do, instead of just by the seat of the pants, they would have realized that they were walking into a firestorm. And they would have done it different. I'm sure they would have done it different. They got caught. Jim Stasiak and Holly Frishy called them out on it, and they had to change their tactic.
Thank God.
Well, the other thing they did, and no company in this country would ever do it, is they spent over $5 million on a plan for that park without taking care of the land. You just don't do that kind of stupid stuff. And all but one councilman votes against it.
Well, that side of it I can't really speak to.
We vote
I know
for
you can't, but
I can tell you about the environmental liabilities all day long, and I don't know about the politics. I can only imagine. But anything I tell you after that would be opinion. What I'm telling you now, that's the law. That's fact. Yeah.
If they clean the whole park area to residential standards,
Yeah.
you consider it safe then?
Yeah. I would do it myself. I'd clean it up to true residential standards, not VAP residential, true residential, the real residential standard, not
What's the difference between VAP residential and regular residential?
about, well, let's see. The hexavalent chrome standard under the CERCLA standard for cleanup or background is like 3 or 5 parts per million. The VAP standard is 20. So it's 4 times more higher. That's a VAP standard. So they give you, once again, VAP is a great program. I am not beating up VAP. VAP is excellent. We've used it a million times. Why? Because it alleviates you from the original citation, the original liability from when it got spilled, right? When it got out of the container it's supposed to be in, you're out. You don't have that liability. But if you do something stupid in the middle of it, you can still be cited. You're still on the hook. You got to do it right. You got to dispose of it right. You got to dig it up right. But it doesn't take it to clean. It takes it to half clean, which is great for commercial and industrial properties, which is where we use it. All the steel mills along the Ohio River, all over Pittsburgh, and 1 second, Diane, all over. We used it a million times. That and the Brownfield standard, those places are flourishing. It's a fantastic program. Look at Pittsburgh. Man, it was nothing but filthy, dirty mills everywhere. We cleaned it up this much. And we put concrete on it. And we built industrial buildings. Revitalized the area. It's a fantastic program. Tremendous supporter. Just misapplied here. That's all. Tremendous supporter. I'm not beating up that. It's a great program. You had a question.
To clean that up completely, they go in and remove the soil. Where do they take the soil?
Hazardous waste, subtitle C, landfills, hazardous waste.
Where's the, I mean, is that?
Seneca.
The Fire Safe up in Oregon has one. Laidlaw's got, well, it's, Clean Harbors, but whatever. There's hundreds of them.
So in those hazardous waste sites, all this hazardous material is, where's that going?
It's hazardous waste. Usually it gets landfilled, or it gets fuels blended, spent, or they'll recycle it. They can take the material and recycle it. They can pull the metals out and resell the metals if they want, so inclined. The goal of RCRA always has been to recycle, but they made it so punitive and so controlling that people just opted to send their stuff off as hazardous waste rather than try and recycle it. There's a ton of outs for recycling under RCRA. I do it for my companies all the time. You can build, you can distillation column. You can reclaim your solvents forever. All your metals, you can precipitate them out in the path. Reclaim the metals. You do it all the time because there's cost. Hex chrome isn't cheap. Those things aren't cheap, so they reclaim them.
So
They
what
use-
keeps all those toxic chemicals from leaching out?
It's called the performance standard for landfills. It's actually in subtype C, and it gives you the performance standard. So it's a like leachate liner, double liner, triple liner actually technically, and leachate control system, monitoring, continuous monitoring, groundwater monitoring all day long when it's buried, or they have above ground storage tanks. They'll blend and keep it, and they'll do whatever with it to make it, usable. And they'll sell it as a fuels plant. People can use it for other things.
How many feet do we need to remove to get it to the clean you're talking about?
We have to delineate it correctly to find that.
Oh, the soil borings didn't do that?
Well, they didn't do the whole property.
Oh.
They only did what they
gotcha.
thought was something, and then they ended up accidentally finding stuff later.
Okay.
So they didn't quite do it, they did it backwards. If they had project planned and hired somebody that knew what they were doing, they would have project planned it. They would have delineated all the pollution, which is what they should have done, it's called plume. They would have set a grid pattern up, they'd have sampled, and there's a set sample you sample for. It's called 8260, 8262. The metals and the non-metals, the organics. You know what to sample for because you have the list. You already have the list. You can't play ignorant. Ever. You can't play ignorant. The list is there.
So out of the 19 acres, they've really only tested a quarter acre, maybe, if that, right? Just that
Just
little
surface
Ron
fault.
Dick.
No, they were, wherever they did their phase one site assessment,
On both sides of the river.
they said there was maybe something here and they just did a couple of spots
So where
there.
all those factories were down there, they tested in that area. They did test that area.
They tested some down where there was a big spill down there many years ago. There was a company there that had some drums there. It was a transfer station. Raider, I think was the name, Raider Environmental. It's actually who they used as a follow-up for something on this project. I can't remember, but they had a bunch of drums in that building. Jim Kaler had that building, if I remember right. He was renting it to him. And they were transferring hazardous waste drums. The building's no longer there, and the 07 flood ripped them off their moorings, off the pallets, and spilled them everywhere. And they only ever found like 3 barrels. We had to respond to it. Marathon was called in to respond to that. I don't know if you remember. Do you remember that? What a mess down there. We had to, geez, remember that, Susan? Everybody had to get down there wading in that crap, looking for drums with a stick.
So Raider
Low man on the
Environmental.
pole had to go in. I bet you didn't have to go in.
Raider
Working on the
Environmental.
trailer.
Fair enough. Yeah, you were there. I remember you guys were there. Yeah, I'm sorry, what?
Raider Environmental. They sold or donated their hazardous land to the city. Then.
Oh, no, Jimmy Kaler owned it. I think he sold it to the county some time ago.
Oh, the county.
The Kaler Group. I don't,
They went
there's
to the
nothing
county
nefarious
first
about it.
and then to the
It's just
city.
the drums spilled everywhere, which is why, strangely enough, you see all these organics scattered throughout the property. Much of that was a result of the drum spilling, and it flooded, and some of the drums washed down. It was a mess. I don't know what it cost. I think Marathon picked up some of that cost. We didn't have any drums there, but I think they did it out of the kindness of their heart. Marathon, good corporate citizen. Great. Yes.
What's the price tag then to go from VAT to what you're recommending to do? What would be the price tag to clean that up?
3.2 would do it, for sure.
So in light of a $40 million park, $3 million is a drop in the bucket to totally clean that up.
Yeah, pretty
And why
much.
wouldn't
It's what we're trying to say.
Yeah.
Common sense would say, because once you clean it up, so you can't get, the problem is you can't get a no further action letter under the VAC program technically. All you get is a letter that says you cleaned it up to this standard. That's the problem. The NFA letter comes from EPA when you clean the site up, the background, and they will issue the letter. You go to EPA and say, we're gonna clean it up, this is what we wanna do, and they'll issue a letter. Once you get the NFA, you're pretty much out.
How do you make them do it?
Hmm?
How do you make them do it?
With EPA? Oh, you just call.
City.
Oh, I can't make them do anything. I
Maybe
can't
we-
make them do anything. I can only tell them what I'm telling you and see if they hear it. You know, they seem to be driven to go do the project for whatever reason. I don't know.
What's the other side of the argument? Why aren't they?
I don't know. Money? I'm guessing money. I think they ran out of funding. That would be my guess. I don't know. I think they only had about $800,000 left. And let's be honest, we need flood mitigation, man. We need it bad. We need it more than anything. We need it more than a $1 million bridge. We need it. We got to do it. But we got to do it the right way.
Okay, but they say that that property is still gonna flood.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so you put down all this dirt, and it floods again, that dirt's gonna get washed away. Am I crazy or not?
No, but when we do flood projects like that, we can solidify dirt. We can keep dirt from washing, and that's the mesh that the mayor's been talking
Okay.
about. Works great. It's a wonderful product. It's a geotextile, and it mates with the ground, and then it'll clay cap it to keep it from washing. It'll work great. That part of the project's well planned, it'll work. They got that figured out, they just need to clean the environmental stuff up.
So if the river overflows and the river's contaminated, what will they do to clean up the park once the water recedes? Because all that cement
Well,
and
how you gonna know it's
everything
contaminated?
Well,
You
are
have
they
to
gonna
spend
test
every
for it?
time the river comes up sampling it to make that
Well, they should.
determination.
They should.
Nobody's gonna do that. They're not gonna do it, that's the point. That's why you clean it up in the background and you never have to worry about it again. Everybody's off the hook, all the citizens are off the hook. And by the way, just so you know, CERCLA liability pierces qualified immunity. There are plenty of politicians who are been fined or are in jail for doing dumb stuff. Most of the time they're in big cities where they did stupid things, let's be honest. They were corrupt, and our people aren't like that, but they were doing stupid stuff with environmental pieces. By the way, you got a will and trust? All of our elected officials, I hope you would, for heaven's sakes, I hope you have a will and trust. It pierces that veil. You are 100% liable.
So
That's
when-
it. You're on the hook. They go after you personally if they want, if they can't get the money. You're on the hook, man. That's it.
Okay, I know you spoke at council, like back in '23. Did you tell them at that time that they are all liable forever and their heirs?
No, I was in there complaining that they had knocked down the Rome Superior Chrome Plating Building
Okay.
without following the rules.
Okay.
And I think I may have said you could be liable. No, I think it did. I don't remember.
Well, I suggest that they know that they are on the hook forever.
I can't imagine they don't. You know, here's the other thing.
Well, I can't imagine they're voting for the damn thing, so.
Well, maybe it's one or two people driving it, but remember, they're the generator. So the consultant that comes in and tells them, hey, you're not liable forever, or we can do this and get away with it, the consultant isn't on the hook. Now, you'll sue them in civil court,
Yeah.
but if they screw up and bust a reg, we're on the hook, so the consultant can tell them whatever they want. I'm not suggesting they're doing anything nefarious. You know, when Ron King was out, he's great. King's one of the best in the state, in the nation, really. But if you got consultants telling you don't worry about it, you got unelected bureaucrats who will remain nameless, who's real tall, that should have no business making policy, telling you that stuff is gonna be okay. They got no business doing that. They don't know the law, they don't understand it. Heck, there's people that work in this business their whole life and don't understand it. Most attorneys don't get it. Most attorneys don't argue this because it's voodoo world, man. You gotta stay out of it, it's bad. So, I don't know. All I can tell you is what the facts are. All I can tell you is this. I have no idea why we wouldn't just clean it up.
Yeah.
Except for
That's
money.
where I
And
am.
there's so
Yeah.
much money on the table. Even if they build 200 low-income housing units above the bridge, it's still $300, $400 million in construction. You know, the project's big. Why can't we clean it up? Why is it so hard? Why are we fighting on this? Why are we fighting on this? Why are we fighting on everything else, you know? I don't get it. You know, I love parks, I love green space, and we need flood mitigation. Okay, let's all get together and do it the right way. Let's all shut up, stop picking, you know, because I guarantee you, I'm going to go into city council, and I'm going to speak on this, and they hate the messenger, because I challenge them all the time. So they won't hear the message. They'll never hear the message. That's stupid, you know? That's dumb. We need to do better as a community, as elected officials, as people. We all live here. I don't want my grandchildren, which I hope to have someday, playing out there and getting exposed to something that they didn't even know was going to come to the surface. I'm not going to walk around with a sampler. Neither are you. You're not going to, you know. So what do we do? I don't know. But we're pretty much. So I'm happy to answer questions, but anybody that wants to cut bait and run that's still awake, feel free.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you, Tom.
Yeah.
So, we're talking about the generator, which would be the city since they took over the property, but if somebody becomes sick or something happens, it's really the taxpayer,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It's because they're our elected officials, so they're really not on the hook for the decisions they're making. It's really the taxpayer, which would come on our, property tax.
Yeah, I guess. I don't know. It depends on how it's allocated or how it's levied against people. But the fact of the matter is, we're all on the hook. And the other fact of the matter is, they cannot buy an environmental policy now that they have this stuff out there. Nobody's going to sell them a policy. It'll cost more than the bridge to sell them a policy if they'll even get one. They're not going to sell them an environmental policy when you're only going to clean it up halfway. Would you? You own an insurance company. Would you buy it? Would you sell somebody a policy knowing full well that it's going to get cashed in? and big money. So clean it up. This is just no-brainer, guys. I don't get it, but there you go. Yes, ma'am.
The standard that they're going to go by is the VAP, right?
Yeah.
What is this, what are the initials or name or whatever of the standard we want them to go to?
CERCLA background. The VAP is a voluntary action program. So you're volunteering to clean it up. And you're saying, but we can't clean it up as good as we'd like to. We can't clean it up the background standard, residential standard. And you can cut a deal with EPA on certain things too. It depends. You know, EPA is sort of flexible on some of these things. The VAP is voluntary action program. So you're saying, hey man, alleviate us from the liability of the initial spill. We're not going to get cited. We're not going to have any issue there. We're going to go in and try and clean it up and make something great out of it. You know, we're going to build stuff. We're going to take a useless piece of property and bring it around. It's a fantastic program. I'm telling you, I love the program. I've used it a million times. Yes.
You know, we drove in and came past that area, and I don't think there's anyone here that doesn't want to see that developed, but what we want to see is it developed correctly, economically, but also at the best standards, because the whole thing is, there's city council and the mayor are selling this as a point to draw people in, draw community in. Why wouldn't you? I mean, we want to see that developed. It would be an asset, but let's do it the right way.
Yeah, I agree with the mayor. I think it'll be a great draw for the community. Not at a $40 million bridge, but when that's nice and cleaned up, some of the rendering, it looked pretty cool to me, man. I like that big circle thing, you know, I thought that was kind of cool.
Well, I didn't like that.
Oh, okay. You had a question, sir. I'm sorry. I apologize. You would.
I just want to make sure I was following the upper right-hand corner on the board up there. You have VAP and you have clean. And that's two different levels of cleanup, correct?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
It's two entirely
And you're saying that both of those could be acceptable to EPA?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
It happens all the
And
time.
but what you're saying is, the top one,
Over here, over there, sir. I'm sorry.
I'm still up on the upper
Gotcha.
right-hand
Go ahead.
corner.
Right here.
The top one isn't as clean as the bottom one.
Correct.
And the bottom one, we don't carry as much liability in the future as we do with the top one. There still may be, but it's not as much as the top one.
Actually, other than civil court or liability from somebody suing us, we would carry none if we cleaned it up the background. Because background is what's in the ground. That's what's in the ground already when you start. You delineate it, you characterize it, and you say, well, it was 3 parts per million accidental crumb. So if we clean it down to 3, we're done, we're out. EPA will give you a no further action letter. It's called an NFA. That's what you're shooting for. You can't get that in the VAP standard other than you don't have any more action because you cleaned it to the VAP level. That's it. It's a, hey, attaboy, you did a good job. And it's a good thing, by the way. You'll want that.
And so moving from the top to the bottom, VAP to clean, the cost is how much?
I don't know. I'd say about 3.2. Educated guess. Been doing this a long time.
So if one's making the decision to just go with VAP, you're saving $3.5 million.
No, they're at 870,000 already. Plus what they've already spent. So they're already over $1 million.
I'm talking about the difference between the two. I don't care what's been spent.
So
The
they're already at
difference between
800
the
to
two.
finish it. So what's the difference between 800,000 and 3.2? I don't know. I had to take my shoes
Okay, but the point is, saving something but leaving a liability in the future.
Yeah, that's
Something low cost
it's a
today
trade.
with a longer term liability, or something higher cost that doesn't carry that liability.
Yep, and we do it all the time in the industrial world. We trade environmental liability for property. We did it. We did it in Marathon. We did the Ashland merger. We traded all the environmental liability, or almost all of it, for the refineries for property. It was a handshake agreement. We traded it. We did it, and it worked great for us. We had to go in later, though, and clean them all up. We spent a bunch of money cleaning up, especially Canton. Oh, boy, that was a mess.
Would you feel comfortable having a pregnant daughter playing at the park? I mean,
No, I'm not going to feel comfortable letting anybody down there until I
Okay, then my question is, should they have people down there working or doing anything, should they be wearing PPE?
You know, you have to sample. You have to make that determination. You have to see where you're at, and that's the problem. Once again,
I mean, I feel like I go down there a complete hazmat suit.
no. What I'm telling you is they didn't delineate all the pollution. They haven't done the true determination because they didn't have the money to spend to do it, and they got forced to spend more. They didn't delineate it. They didn't set up a grid pattern for the entire property and punch holes and go to depth which would be bedrock, and sample and run all the tests and find out what's out there. They didn't do that. That's what everybody does ahead of time when they buy a property. Or they trade environmental liability for property or cash. That's how it works. The problem is, in their hubris, they put us on the hook. That's the problem. If it was just them, well, maybe it would, well, actually, I'd still warn them. You know those people, you know? Still call some of them friends, even though they can cuss and throw stuff at me. I didn't want anybody to lose their fortune because they made a poor decision. I'd never want to see Grant and Susan. Their children grew up with ours, for heaven's sakes. We don't want to see that. You need to understand what you're looking at.
Right.
And the problem is there's some, I'm not saying they're misrepresenting things, but they could be said a little better, with a little more force. How about that? Maybe
Well,
explain to them a little better.
At last council, I think it was Holly, asked the mayor, once they transferred the properties that the commissioners had to the city, what are you going to do with them? And her comment was, I don't know, when I get them, I'll figure it out.
Yeah, they're not doing any due diligence. And they're just doing that to stop people like my investor group from buying other properties. They said that on the record, so be it. That's business. I don't have a problem with that, you know? We got several already under contract already, right in the middle of the whole thing, so that's beside the point. But she didn't do any due diligence, and nobody's forcing her to do it. That's just dumb. That's just playing with our money.
Well, you're playing with lives too.
Potentially, absolutely. It's a latent effect. It could take 10, 15 years for that stuff to kick in. It absolutely could. It might already be, we might already have been exposed for how many years? You know, that Romic site was down there forever. They had a dirt floor in the plating bath. They just dumped it right in the ground, man. Superiors.
Should ask Putnam County people to start doing some testing downriver.
Well, it would stay in the sediment for a long time.
Well,
It would stay in the sediment of the river and the plants. That's the chemistry of it.
I have two questions. The first one's more important. To reword the question I asked you earlier, I should have said, what can we do to convince them to do clean instead of that?
Go to city council and talk.
Okay.
The only thing you can do is be a presence. That's it. And they're probably not going to listen to us. There's too much money on the table, but maybe. You never know.
Well, if that ordinance is on the ballot and gets passed, that should be helpful, shouldn't it? I mean,
Yeah, well, it forces the, well, you're talking about the,
the initiative petition.
yeah, the initiative. Well, it forces them to stop and let the people vote on whether or not they want to do
They're
it.
gonna tie that up in court until that project's over.
I didn't hear
They're
that.
gonna tie it up in
That's
court
the way
until
you-
that project's over.
That's the
I
best way to
just-
tell
I
the
don't know.
people that
Lawfare.
their voice matters, right? To, if they pass something at the ballot, to take them to court and say, we're not gonna do it. That would be a good way to tell the people how our vote really
That's a
matters.
question for Bob Feitner. I'm not, once again, I'm only teaching you environmental regulations here.
Right.
You might want to ask Bob Feitner. He could probably tell you what could happen. I don't know. I'm sure that it would be challenged.
Yeah, he'd like to
Much
use
money on the
Findlay
table.
tax dollars to pay his attorneys to fight the citizens in court if they pass the ordinance at the ballot. Like,
I hope they
who
don't
would do
I
that?
hope they listen to me.
That's psychotic.
Just clean it, just clean it.
Is this any different than any property anywhere else? Because, I mean, like Riverside had buildings down there and stuff.
Well, actually, this happened at the Brandman Tire State. Remember the Brandman Tire dump? Yeah, it was a hazardous waste site. Tires are considered hazardous waste. You can't take them to the landfill. Did you ever notice that? They have to take them off to the side to charge you extra. People don't realize that, 'cause you're not allowed to put a tire in the landfill. So they put them on a truck and they haul them off as hazardous waste, or regrind. They can regrind them and reuse them. So, but citizens got together because it was such a mess and said, don't do it. And they put an initiative together and it got on the ballot and they voted it down.
I don't think you're gonna find a piece of clean land anywhere anymore anyway.
No, I don't know, that's debatable. Historically, we were bad polluters. People just weren't responsible. That's just the way the world was, I'm telling you, I grew up in Pittsburgh in the mills, man. The river would blow. The street lights were on in the middle of the day from pollution. It was bad, We sucked and breathed zinc from the zinc plating mill just down the street from us where I grew up. I'm sure that's probably why I'm so handsome. Anyway, all right, I don't want to hold you long. Promised you an hour and 15. Anybody wants to stick around, feel free, please. Happy to answer questions. Got my number, call, please. Well, I can put it back up there. Please feel free. Go to council, express your concerns. Just talk to them. Call your council person. Yeah, Jeff.
You ever watch Fox News and then say, wait a minute, this is a little bit, I can believe some of this, but not. And then you go the other way and watch PBS News out there, and you watch them and you say, wait a minute, I know that's, if you want to do this, I was Marathon's environmental attorney long before he ever was there, and I've done this for 40 years. What do you think you're walking on at the Toledo Zoo or the Art Museum? I did all those sites, okay? I know, and I've done this for a long time, and assessed risk. But if you wanna just do your own due diligence and try and decide on these matters that Tom is talking about. My last name is Fort, F-O-R-T, and if you can't remember, think of Fort Findlay, which is right there, and I'm the first name. And you can find my name and number and location on my website, and if you want to come talk about this and hear a little bit different version of it all, I'd be glad to talk to you, okay?
You want to sign a paper that would say you and your family will take on the liability yourselves?
No, that's a good question. Answer. You made a strong statement. Answer that.
No, nobody's going to take on liability.
But
You're the one. You're not going to back up your own words.
Yeah, back up.
Thank you.
Wait, we're being fair. We heard what you said. I mean, and that's a fair question.
The thing that needs to be said in all this is all about risk. You know, I had a law school professor say,